The blood on her wedding dress had long since washed away, but Beatrice Davenport could still see it every time she closed her eyes, every time she looked down at her trembling hands, every time a man's voice rose even slightly above conversational tone. She stood at the window of her small rented room above the general store in Yuma, Arizona, watching the dusty street below as cowboys and miners moved through the late afternoon heat of 1882, their boots kicking up little clouds that hung in the still air before settling back to earth. Her first husband had been handsome in the way that poisonous things often are, beautiful and deadly, with eyes that could shift from warmth to ice in the space between heartbeats. Thomas Whitmore had courted her properly in San Francisco, brought her flowers, spoken poetry, convinced her parents that he was a railroad man with prospects. The truth had revealed itself 3 days after their wedding, when she had burned the biscuits and he had shown her what he thought of imperfection. For 2 years, she had learned to walk on eggshells, to speak in whispers, to make herself small and invisible. She had learned that love could be a cage, that promises could be lies, that a man's hands could create bruises in places no one would ever see. Thomas had died in a saloon fight in Sacramento, shot through the heart by a card player he had accused of cheating. Beatrice had stood at his grave and felt nothing but a profound, guilty relief that left her hollow. She had taken what little money remained, bought a ticket on the first stagecoach heading east, and had not stopped running until the Arizona heat had driven the memories of cold San Francisco fog from her lungs. But the scars remained, invisible to everyone but her, a map of fear written across her soul in invisible ink that only activated when kindness tried to touch her. She had been in Yuma for 3 months now, working as a seamstress and taking in laundry, keeping to herself, speaking to no one more than necessary. The landlady, Mrs. Chen, a Chinese woman who had outlasted her own husband and built a small empire of property in this rough town, asked no questions and accepted Beatrice's rent on time. The arrangement suited them both. Beatrice had no interest in building a new life, only in surviving the one she had left behind. The knock on her door that evening came just as the sun was painting the sky the color of dried blood. Beatrice flinched at the sound, her heart immediately racing, her hands going cold. Through the thin wood, Mrs. Chen's voice called out, accented but clear. "Miss Davenport, there is a man downstairs asking for a seamstress. He says he needs work done urgently. I told him you might help." Beatrice pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammer against her palm. "Tell him I am closed for the day. He is offering double your normal rate. He seems respectable." They all seemed respectable, Beatrice thought. Thomas had seemed respectable. She closed her eyes and took 3 deep breaths, the way she had taught herself to do when the panic rose up like floodwater. She needed the money. Winter would come eventually, even to Arizona, and she needed to build up her savings in case she had to run again. "I will be down in a moment," she finally called. She checked her reflection in the small, cracked mirror above her washbasin. Her dark hair was pulled back severely from her face, revealing features that had once been called pretty, but now seemed drawn and tired. She was 23 years old and felt ancient. She pinched her cheeks to bring some color to them, smoothed down her plain brown dress, and descended the narrow stairs with her hand gripping the railing tightly. The man waiting in Mrs. Chen's front parlor was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his dusty shirt. His hat was in his hands, revealing hair the color of wheat fields in summer, and when he turned to look at her, his eyes were the warm brown of saddle leather left in the sun. His face was weathered but kind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. He was perhaps 27 or 28, young but with the bearing of someone who had seen his share of hard living. "Madam," he said, his voice a low rumble that reminded Beatrice of distant thunder. "My name is Harrison Wells. I apologize for the late hour, but I am in something of a predicament." Beatrice stood in the doorway, maintaining her distance, her body angled toward the stairs in case she needed to flee. "What kind of work do you need?" Harrison held up a shirt, and Beatrice could see even from across the room that it was badly torn, a long rip down the back and one sleeve nearly separated from the shoulder. "I had an argument with a stubborn horse and some barbed wire. The horse won. This is my only good shirt, and I have a meeting with a cattle buyer tomorrow morning. I cannot show up looking like I have been in a brawl." Despite herself, Beatrice felt a small smile tug at the corner of her mouth. "The horse did this. The horse knocked me into the barbed wire fence. I hold them both equally responsible." Harrison's eyes crinkled at the corners, and Beatrice realized he was gently mocking himself, inviting her to share in the humor of his misfortune rather than expecting sympathy. She stepped forward slowly, extending her hand for the shirt. "I can have it ready by morning. It will cost you $3. Mrs. Chen said you charge $1.50 for this kind of work. You said you were willing to pay double." Harrison laughed, a warm, genuine sound that filled the small parlor. "That I did. You have got me there. $3 it is." He handed her the shirt and their fingers brushed for just a moment. Beatrice jerked her hand back as though burned, and Harrison's smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "I am sorry, madam. I did not mean to startle you." "You did not," Beatrice said quickly, clutching the shirt to her chest like armor. "I will have this ready by 7 tomorrow morning. You can collect it then." "I appreciate it greatly, Miss Davenport," she said. "Beatrice Davenport." "It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Miss Davenport, even under such circumstances." Harrison settled his hat back on his head. "I will see you in the morning." Beatrice watched him leave, his long strides carrying him quickly out into the street where a large bay horse was tied to the hitching post. He swung into the saddle with an easy grace, touched the brim of his hat in her direction, and rode off into the gathering darkness. Only when he was completely out of sight did Beatrice realize she had been holding her breath. That night, she sat by lamplight and repaired Harrison Wells's shirt with tiny, precise stitches that would hold strong under strain. She found herself taking extra care, making sure the seams were perfectly straight, that the fabric lay flat and smooth. She told herself it was simply professional pride, that she would do the same for any customer. But when she finally finished near midnight, she held the shirt up to the light and examined it from every angle, looking for flaws she knew she would not find. Harrison arrived promptly at 7 the next morning, looking freshly shaved and considerably cleaner than the evening before. He paid her the $3 without complaint and then held up the shirt, examining her work with an expression of genuine admiration. "This is remarkable work, Miss Davenport. I cannot even tell where the tears were. You have a real talent." "It is just sewing," Beatrice said, uncomfortable with the praise. "It is craftsmanship," Harrison corrected gently. "There is a difference between doing something and doing it well. You do it well." He folded the shirt carefully and tucked it under his arm. "I hope you will not think me forward, but I wanted to ask if you might do some other work for me. I have 3 other shirts that need mending, nothing urgent, and 2 pairs of trousers that could use patching. I would pay your regular rate, of course." Beatrice hesitated. There was something about this man that unsettled her, though not in the way Thomas had unsettled her. Harrison Wells seemed solid, steady, the kind of man who said what he meant and meant what he said. But that frightened her in its own way, because she had learned not to trust her own judgment when it came to men. I suppose that would be acceptable, she finally said. You can bring them by this evening if you wish. I will do that. Thank you, Miss Davenport. He tipped his hat again and left, and Beatrice found herself watching him go once more, wondering why she felt disappointed to see him leave. Over the following weeks, Harrison Wells became a regular customer. He brought her mending, but he also brought conversation, showing up at hours when Beatrice was not busy with other work, settling himself in Mrs. Chen's parlor and talking to her about his ranch, about the cattle he raised, about the challenges of making a living in the harsh Arizona territory. He never pressed her to share her own stories, never asked invasive questions, seemed content to simply fill the silence with his own words while she worked. Beatrice found herself looking forward to his visits, though she would never have admitted it. Harrison had a way of talking that was soothing, his voice washing over her like cool water, and he had a gift for finding humor in the hardships of frontier life. He told her about the time his prize bull had escaped and led half the town on a merry chase through the streets, ending up in the church during a baptism. He described the characters who populated Yuma, from the German baker who made the best strudel west of the Mississippi, to the grizzled old prospector who swore he was one good strike away from becoming rich, despite having said the same thing for 20 years. Slowly, carefully, Harrison began to draw Beatrice out of her shell. He asked her opinion on things, simple questions at first. Did she think the weather would hold through the end of the month? Did she prefer coffee or tea? Had she tried the peaches at the market, because they were particularly good this year? Beatrice answered cautiously at first, always waiting for the trap, for the moment when her answer would be wrong and anger would follow. But Harrison only listened, nodding thoughtfully, treating her words as though they mattered. One evening in late September, Harrison arrived with his usual bundle of mending, but also with a small package wrapped in brown paper. He set it on the table beside her sewing basket with an almost shy expression. "I saw this in the Mercantile and thought of you," he said. "I hope you will not think me presumptuous." Beatrice stared at the package as though it might contain a snake. "Mr. Wells, I cannot accept gifts from you. It would not be proper." "It is not a gift exactly," Harrison said quickly. "More of a business investment. Just open it, please, and then you can decide." With trembling fingers, Beatrice unwrapped the package. Inside was a small wooden sewing box, beautifully made with delicate hinges, and a fitted interior containing compartments for thread, needles, scissors, and other notions. It was the most beautiful thing Beatrice had seen in years, the wood polished to a soft glow, the craftsmanship evident in every detail. "I cannot accept this," she whispered, even as her fingers traced the smooth wood. "It is too much." "Your current sewing basket is falling apart," Harrison said reasonably. "I have watched you struggle with it. A craftsperson deserves good tools. Think of it as an investment in the quality of work you do for me." It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. But Beatrice wanted the box so badly, wanted something beautiful in her life of brown dresses and plain rooms, that she allowed herself to be convinced. "You are very kind, Mr. Wells." "Harrison, please. I think we have known each other long enough to dispense with such formality." "Harrison," Beatrice said carefully, testing the name on her tongue. "And you may call me Beatrice if you wish." His smile was like sunrise. "Beatrice, it suits you. It means she who brings joy. Did you know that?" "I have never brought anyone joy," Beatrice said before she could stop herself. The words came out bitter hard. Harrison was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "That is not true. You bring me joy every time I see you. Your smile, rare as it is, brightens my entire day. The care you put into your work, the way you listen when I ramble on about my foolish adventures, the intelligence I see in your eyes when you are considering something I have said. All of that brings me joy, Beatrice, more than you know." Beatrice felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been frozen solid since the day she had watched Thomas's coffin lowered into the ground. Tears sprang to her eyes, and she turned her face away quickly, not wanting Harrison to see her weakness. But Harrison was already moving, and before she could stop him, he had crossed the small space between them and was kneeling beside her chair, not touching her but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "What happened to you, Beatrice?" he asked softly. "Who hurt you so badly that you flinch from kindness like it is a blow?" "I do not wish to speak of it," Beatrice managed, her voice shaking. "You do not have to. Not now, not ever if you do not want to, but I need you to know something and I need you to believe it." Harrison waited until she turned her head to look at him, her vision blurred with tears. "Whatever was done to you, whoever hurt you, it was not your fault. You did not deserve it, you did not cause it, and not all men are like the one who hurt you." "How did you know it was a man?" Beatrice whispered. "Because I have seen that look before. My mother had it before my father died. He was not a good man, my father. He drank and he raged and he made everyone around him walk on eggshells. When he died, my mother said it was the first time she had breathed freely in 20 years. I was 15. I swore then that I would never be like him, that I would never make someone I loved feel afraid." Beatrice stared at him, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The kindness in his eyes was not naive. It was chosen, deliberate, a conscious decision to be different from what he had known. "Your mother, is she still alive? She died 3 years ago, pneumonia. But she had those last years of peace, and I am grateful for that." Harrison slowly reached out his hand, palm up, an offering rather than a demand. "I would like to court you properly, Beatrice Davenport. I would like to take you to dinner, to walk with you in the evening when the heat has broken, to show you that not every man will hurt you. But only if you are willing. I will not push, I will not demand. The choice is entirely yours." Beatrice looked at his hand, large and calloused from hard work, the nails clean and trimmed, the fingers steady. She thought of Thomas's hands, which had been soft and white, gentleman's hands that had left bruises in hidden places. She thought of how Harrison had never once in all their conversations said anything cruel, never mocked her or diminished her, never tried to make her feel small. Slowly, so slowly that it felt like moving through honey, Beatrice reached out and placed her hand in his. Harrison's fingers closed around hers gently, his touch warm and careful, and he smiled at her with such open joy that Beatrice felt that crack in her chest widen just a little more, letting in a thin stream of light. "We can go slowly," Harrison said. "As slowly as you need. There is no rush. I am a patient man, Beatrice, and you are worth waiting for." Their courtship, if it could be called that, was unlike anything Beatrice had ever experienced. Harrison was true to his word about going slowly. He came to see her almost every evening, but he never touched her without permission, never stood too close, never made her feel trapped. He brought her small things, practical gifts that he disguised as business necessities. A new pair of scissors because hers were getting dull. A bolt of fabric because he had heard her mention needing a new dress. A book of poetry because she had once said she liked to read. He took her to dinner at the small restaurant run by the German baker and his wife, where they served hearty meals and the bread was always fresh. Harrison talked about his dreams for his ranch, how he wanted to build it into something that could sustain not just him but a family someday. He spoke of his plans as though they were not certain, as though he understood that the future was not guaranteed, but his hope was evident in every word. Beatrice found herself talking more than she had in years. She told him about her love of sewing, how she had learned from her grandmother who had been a seamstress in Boston. She talked about books she had read, about how she had always wanted to see the ocean but had been too afraid to go to the docks alone when she lived in San Francisco. She did not tell him about Thomas, not yet, but Harrison never pushed. One evening in October, they walked together along the Colorado River, which ran along the edge of Yuma, its waters low in the autumn drought but still flowing steadily. The air had finally started to cool from the brutal summer heat, and the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple that took Beatrice's breath away. "I have never seen anything so beautiful," she said, stopping to watch the colors shift and change. "Neither have I," Harrison said, but when Beatrice glanced at him, she realized he was not looking at the sunset. He was looking at her. She felt her cheeks heat, but for the first time in years, the attention did not make her want to run. "Harrison, I need to tell you something," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could reconsider. "About my past, about why I am the way I am." Harrison took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Only if you are ready. I was married before. His name was Thomas. He was cruel." The words felt like stones in her mouth, heavy and sharp. "He hurt me. Not always in ways that left visible marks, but in ways that made me feel like I was nothing, like I was worthless. He would tell me I was stupid, clumsy, ugly. He would break things and blame me for making him angry. He would grab my arms hard enough to bruise and then tell me I bruised easily, that I was too delicate, that it was my fault for being so fragile." Harrison's jaw was tight, but he said nothing, letting her continue. "Sometimes it was worse. When he drank, or when business went badly, he would. He would hit me, always where no one could see. My ribs, my back, my stomach. Once he pushed me down the stairs and then told everyone I had tripped because I was not watching where I was going. I believed him. I believed all of it was my fault." "Beatrice," Harrison said, his voice rough with emotion, "he died. A man shot him in a saloon fight. I went to his funeral and I felt relieved, Harrison. I was glad he was dead. What kind of person does that make me?" "A normal one," Harrison said fiercely. "A human one. You survived something terrible, Beatrice. Your relief was not wrong. It was the natural response to being freed from torment." Beatrice felt tears streaming down her face, but these were different from the ones she had cried in the darkness of her room so many nights. These were not tears of fear or shame, but of release, of finally speaking the truth she had carried alone for so long. Harrison pulled her into his arms, moving slowly enough that she could have stopped him if she wanted to. When she did not resist, he wrapped her in his embrace, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other spread warm and solid across her back. He held her while she cried, not saying anything, just being present, being steady, being safe. When her tears finally subsided, Beatrice pulled back slightly, looking up at Harrison through wet lashes. "I am broken," she whispered. "I do not know if I can be fixed." "You are not broken," Harrison said firmly. "You are wounded, and that is different. Wounds can heal, Beatrice. With time and care and patience, wounds can heal. And I would like to help you heal if you will let me. Not because I want to fix you, but because I want to be with you, exactly as you are, scared and strong and surviving." "Why?" Beatrice asked. "Why would you want someone like me when there must be dozens of women who would not come with all this damage?" Harrison cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the last of her tears. "Because I see you, Beatrice. Not just the scars, not just the fear, but everything you are underneath. I see your kindness, the way you slip extra biscuits to the children who come to the general store. I see your strength, that you got up every day and survived something that would have broken a lesser person. I see your intelligence, your humor, your careful grace. I see you, and what I see is a woman I am falling in love with. have fallen in love with, if I am being honest. Beatrice's breath caught in her throat. You love me. I do. I know it is too soon to say. I know you are not ready to hear it, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love you, Beatrice Davenport. I love your quiet strength and your rare smiles. I love the way you bite your lip when you are concentrating on your sewing. I love how you listen to my stories like they matter. I love the way you are trying so hard to heal, even when you are terrified. I love you, and I will wait however long it takes for you to believe that you deserve to be loved. Beatrice felt something shift inside her, like ice breaking up on a frozen river when spring finally comes. The scars were still there, the invisible map of pain that covered her soul, but for the first time, she could see past them to something else, something that might be hope. I do not know if I can say it back, she said honestly. Not yet. I do not know if I even remember how to love someone. That is all right, Harrison said, smiling down at her. I have enough love for both of us right now. You can borrow mine until you are ready to feel your own. Standing there by the river, with the last light of sunset fading into twilight and the first stars beginning to appear overhead, Beatrice made a choice. She stretched up on her toes and pressed her lips to Harrison's, a brief, chaste kiss that tasted of salt and hope. Harrison held perfectly still, letting her control the kiss, letting her set the pace and the boundaries. When she pulled back, his eyes were shining. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For trusting me enough to try. The months that followed were not easy. Beatrice's healing was not a straight line, but a zigzag path with progress and setbacks, good days and bad days. There were times when Harrison would reach for her hand, and she would flinch, when a raised voice in the street would send her into a panic, when nightmares would leave her shaking and unable to sleep. But Harrison remained constant through all of it, patient and understanding, never making her feel guilty for her fear, never suggesting that she should be over it by now. He introduced her to his ranch in November, driving her out in a small wagon to see the land he was so proud of. The property was beautiful in its harsh way. Acres of scrubland dotted with cattle, a small but sturdy house with a wide porch, and a barn that Harrison had built himself. He showed her around like a boy showing off a treasure, pointing out the improvements he had made, the plans he had for expansion. This could be a real home, he said, standing on the porch and looking out over his land. A place to build a life, raise a family, if a person wanted that, I mean. Some people prefer town living. It is peaceful, Beatrice said, and she meant it. There was something soothing about the vast openness of the land, the way she could see for miles in every direction. No walls closing in, no rooms where violence could happen hidden from the world. Just open sky and honest earth. Would you ever want to live somewhere like this? Harrison asked carefully. Beatrice looked at him, at this man who had shown her such patience, such kindness, who had never once made her feel anything but cherished. I might, she said, someday. With the right person. Harrison's smile was brilliant. That is all I needed to hear. Winter in Arizona was mild compared to what Beatrice had known in San Francisco, but there were still cold nights when frost crept across the windows and the wind blew dust devils through the streets. On Christmas Eve, Harrison brought her a present wrapped in green fabric with a red ribbon. Inside was a shawl, hand-knit from soft wool, dyed a deep blue that reminded Beatrice of the evening sky. My mother made this, Harrison said. It was one of the last things she finished before she died. I have been saving it for someone special, someone I thought would appreciate the work and the love that went into it. I want you to have it, Beatrice. Beatrice wrapped the shawl around her shoulders, feeling the warmth of it, the weight of the gift. This is your mother's work. Are you certain you want to give it to me? I cannot think of anyone I would rather give it to. My mother would have liked you, Beatrice. she would have recognized your strength. They spent Christmas Day together at the ranch, and Harrison cooked dinner for them both, a turkey that was slightly dry and potatoes that were lumpy but made with such care that Beatrice found them delicious. They sat by the fire afterward, and Harrison told her stories about Christmases past, about his mother's terrible singing voice and his father's rare good moods when the drink had not yet taken hold. Beatrice told him about Christmas mornings with her grandmother, about the year she had received her first sewing kit, and how it had felt like being given the keys to a kingdom. As the fire burned low, Harrison pulled Beatrice close to his side, his arm around her shoulders, and she let herself relax into his warmth. She was not healed, not completely, might never be completely healed. But she could feel the scars starting to fade, could feel herself becoming more than just a collection of wounds. With Harrison, she was becoming whole again, becoming a person who could laugh and hope and maybe even love. "I want to marry you," Harrison said into the quiet. "Not now, not until you are ready, but someday. I want you to be my wife, Beatrice. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build a life with you, face whatever comes together. Will you think about it? Will you consider saying yes when you are ready?" Beatrice turned to look at him, this good man who had loved her through her fear, who had shown her that kindness was not weakness and that love did not have to hurt. "I will think about it," she said. "But Harrison, I think my answer will be yes. I think it already is yes. I am just learning to trust that feeling." Harrison kissed her then, a deep, slow kiss that tasted of promise and patience, and Beatrice kissed him back, pouring into it all the feelings she was still learning to name. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "I will wait," he said, "however long you need." But Beatrice was discovering that she did not want to wait, not anymore. She had spent too much of her life in fear, too many years letting Thomas's ghost control her choices. Harrison had shown her what love could be, and she wanted to claim it, to step fully into this new life she was building. "Ask me again," she said. "Ask me now." Harrison pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Beatrice Davenport, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how precious you are, how worthy of love and care and respect?" "Yes," Beatrice said, and the word felt like freedom. "Yes, Harrison Wells, I will marry you, I will be your wife, I will build a life with you. Yes." Harrison let out a whoop of joy that made Beatrice laugh, a real, full laugh that felt rusty from disuse but genuine. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children, and when he set her down, they were both grinning like fools. "We will do this right," Harrison said. "A proper wedding, with witnesses and a preacher and everything legal and binding. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours. When would you like to marry? Spring? Summer?" Beatrice thought about it, thought about the months stretching ahead, thought about spending them in her small room above the general store, alone with her memories. "February," she said. "I do not want to wait until spring. February, before it gets too hot again. Is that too soon?" "February is perfect," Harrison said. "February is wonderful. We can marry on Valentine's Day if you want, make it romantic." "I do not need grand romantic gestures," Beatrice said, touching his face gently. "I just need you." They married on February 10th, 1883, in the small church at the edge of Yuma, with Mrs. Chen and the German baker and his wife as witnesses. Beatrice wore a dress she had sewn herself from pale yellow fabric, a color that reminded her of sunrise and new beginnings. Harrison wore his best suit, and a tie that he clearly was not comfortable in, tugging at the collar until Beatrice finally reached up and straightened it for him, laughing at his discomfort. The ceremony was simple. the vows traditional. But when Harrison slipped the gold band onto Beatrice's finger and promised to love and cherish her, she heard the weight of his sincerity in every word. When it was her turn to make her promises, she looked into his eyes and let herself believe, finally and fully, that this was real, that this was safe, that this was hers. "I promise to love you," she said, her voice steady. "I promise to trust you with my heart, even when it is hard. I promise to build a life with you, full of joy and laughter and honest conversation. I promise to see you for who you are, to appreciate your kindness, your strength, your patience. You have shown me what love should be, Harrison. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you what it means to be loved in return." Harrison's eyes were suspiciously bright as the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and when he kissed her, it was gentle and reverent, a promise sealed with the sweetness of forever. They honeymooned at the ranch, spending a week alone together, learning each other in ways both practical and intimate. Beatrice had been terrified of the wedding night, afraid that her memories of Thomas would intrude, that she would freeze or panic or ruin everything. But Harrison had been so careful, so attentive to her comfort, asking permission for every touch, every kiss, every progression, that what could have been traumatic became healing instead. He showed her that intimacy could be gentle, that passion did not require pain, that being vulnerable with someone you trusted was the greatest gift two people could give each other. Afterward, lying in Harrison's arms in the bed they would share for the rest of their lives, Beatrice realized that something fundamental had shifted. The scars were still there, she could still feel them if she looked, but they no longer defined her. They were part of her story, but they were not the whole story. Harrison had helped her write new chapters, chapters filled with love and safety and the slow, steady work of healing. "What are you thinking about?" Harrison asked, his fingers trailing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I am thinking that I am happy," Beatrice said, and the truth of it made her smile. "Truly happy, perhaps for the first time in my life. You did that, Harrison. You loved me until I could see the scars fade." "The scars are not gone," Harrison said gently. "They may never be completely gone. But they do not have to define you. You are so much more than what was done to you, Beatrice. You always were." "I am starting to believe that," Beatrice said. "Thanks to you." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Beatrice moved her sewing work to the ranch, setting up a small room as her workroom where she could take in jobs from town. Harrison ran the cattle operation, but he always made time for her, stopping in during the day to steal a kiss or share a cup of coffee, coming in each evening to have dinner with her and talk about their days. Life was not always perfect. There were still moments when Beatrice would wake from nightmares, when old fears would rear up unexpectedly. There were arguments, mostly small ones about practical things, but the first time they had a real disagreement about whether to spend money on new fencing or save it for winter supplies, Beatrice had felt her old panic rising, waiting for Harrison to explode, to yell, to hurt her. Instead, Harrison had taken a deep breath, stepped back, and said, "I am getting frustrated and I need to take a walk to clear my head. But I love you, Beatrice, and we will figure this out together when I come back. I promise." He had returned an hour later, calmer, and they had talked through the issue rationally, compromising on a solution that satisfied them both. Afterward, Harrison had held her while she cried, understanding without being told that his simple act of walking away to cool down had shown her what healthy conflict resolution looked like, had proven that anger did not have to lead to violence. "You are teaching me how to be married," Beatrice told him through her tears. "Really married, not just surviving together." "We are teaching each other," Harrison corrected. "You show me every day what real strength looks like. You make me want to be the best version of myself." Spring brought new life to the ranch. The cattle had calves. The desert bloomed with unexpected flowers after a brief rainy season, and Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. She had been terrified to tell Harrison, afraid of what it would mean, afraid of bringing a child into the world when she herself still felt like she was learning how to live. But Harrison had been overjoyed, picking her up and spinning her around just like he had when she agreed to marry him. "We are going to be parents," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "You are going to be a mother, I am going to be a father. Beatrice, this is wonderful." "Are you not afraid?" Beatrice asked. "I am terrified. What if I am a terrible mother? What if I pass on my fears to our child?" "You are going to be an amazing mother," Harrison said firmly. "You are kind and patient and strong. You survived hell and came out the other side with your heart still intact. Our child will be lucky to have you." The pregnancy was not easy. The Arizona heat was brutal as summer approached, and Beatrice suffered from morning sickness that lasted all day. But Harrison was attentive, bringing her cool water, making sure she rested, taking over many of the household chores without complaint. He talked to her swelling belly at night, telling their unborn child stories, promising to be a good father, to protect and love and cherish them always. In November of 1883, after a long and difficult labor that left Beatrice exhausted and scared, their son was born. Harrison held the tiny, squalling infant with tears streaming down his face, looking at Beatrice with such love and gratitude that she felt her heart might burst. "He is perfect," Harrison said. "Beatrice, he is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They named him James, after Beatrice's beloved grandfather, and called him Jamie. He had Harrison's blue eyes and Beatrice's dark hair, and from the moment she held him, Beatrice felt a fierce, protective love that both terrified and exhilarated her. She had not known she was capable of such feeling, had not known her damaged heart could expand to encompass this tiny person who depended on her entirely. Harrison was as devoted a father as he was a husband. He woke for the night feedings, changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with Jamie when he was fussy. He had not the slightest idea what he was doing, and neither did Beatrice, but they figured it out together, laughing at their mistakes, celebrating their small victories. "I never knew I could be this tired," Beatrice said one night, nursing Jamie while Harrison dozed on the chair beside her, exhausted from a full day of work followed by hours of soothing a colicky baby. "I never knew I could be this happy," Harrison murmured, opening one eye to smile at her. "Even bone tired and covered in spit-up, I have never been happier." Beatrice looked at her small family, at her husband whose love had healed her, at her son who represented the future they were building together, and realized that the scars had indeed faded. They were still there, would always be there in some form, but they were no longer the most important thing about her. She was no longer Thomas's widow, defined by abuse and survival. She was Harrison's wife, Jamie's mother, a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side transformed. The years rolled forward, bringing changes and challenges, but also joy and growth. The ranch prospered under Harrison's careful management, and Beatrice's sewing business grew as her reputation for quality work spread. They added on to the house, creating more space as their family expanded. A daughter named Grace arrived in 1885, followed by another son, Samuel, in 1887. Each child was precious, each one loved and wanted. Beatrice marveled at how easy it was to be the kind of mother she wanted to be, how natural it felt to show her children affection, to praise their accomplishments, to comfort their hurts. With Harrison as her partner, parenting felt like an adventure rather than a burden. There were still hard days, times when something would trigger an old memory and Beatrice would struggle. Once, at a town social, a man grabbed her arm unexpectedly to get her attention, and Beatrice had gone rigid with panic, unable to breathe. Harrison had appeared instantly, gently removing the man's hand, explaining that his wife did not like to be touched without warning, protecting her without making her feel weak. Later, at home, Beatrice had apologized for ruining the evening. Harrison had shaken his head firmly. "You did not ruin anything. That man was rude to grab you. You never have to apologize for your reactions, Beatrice. Your feelings are valid." "It has been years," Beatrice said. "Shouldn't I be over it by now?" "Healing is not linear," Harrison said, pulling her into his arms. "Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade, but look how far you have come. You are not the terrified woman I met in Mrs. Chen's parlor. You are strong, confident, a wonderful mother and wife. You have built a beautiful life despite everything. Give yourself credit for that." On their 5th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Beatrice back to the spot by the Colorado River where they had first walked together, where she had told him about Thomas, where he had first told her he loved her. They stood watching the sunset, just as they had that evening, but now they stood close together, comfortable in their physical intimacy, their hands clasped. "You remember standing here 5 years ago?" Harrison asked. "I do. I was so scared, so broken. Not broken, wounded." "There's a difference." Harrison turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I want to tell you something, Beatrice. These last 5 years with you have been the best of my life. Watching you heal, watching you learn to trust and love again, watching you become a mother and thrive at it, has been the greatest privilege I could imagine. You have made me a better man. You have given me a family, a purpose, a home that is more than just walls and a roof. You have given me everything, Beatrice. You saved my life," Beatrice said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You showed me that I deserved to be loved, that I was worth loving. You were patient when I could not be, strong when I was weak, constant when everything else was uncertain. I love you, Harrison Wells. I love you with everything I am." They kissed as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in those same shades of orange and purple, and Beatrice thought about the scars, the invisible marks that Thomas had left on her soul. They were still there, would always be there, but they no longer controlled her life. Harrison had loved her through them, around them, despite them, and in doing so had shown her that scars were just proof of survival, evidence of strength rather than shame. The children grew, as children do, turning from babies into rambunctious youngsters full of energy and curiosity. Jamie was quiet and thoughtful like his mother, with a gift for drawing and a love of books. Grace was bold and fearless, always climbing trees and bringing home injured animals to nurse back to health. Samuel was the diplomat, the peacemaker who could charm his way out of any trouble and negotiate truces between his quarreling siblings. Harrison taught them to ride, to rope cattle, to be responsible stewards of the land. Beatrice taught them to read and write, to sew and cook, to think critically and feel deeply. Together, they raised children who were confident and kind, who understood that strength could be gentle and that vulnerability was not weakness. One evening, when Jamie was 9 and asking questions about life and death and the way the world worked, he asked Beatrice about her life before the ranch. She had known this day would come, had prepared herself for it, but still found it difficult to find the right words. "I was married before I married your father," she said carefully. "To a man who was not kind. He hurt me in ways that made me very sad and very scared." Jamie frowned, his young face serious. "Why would someone hurt you? You are the nicest person I know." "Some people are hurt themselves, and they pass that hurt on to others. It is not right, but it happens. What matters is that I got away from that man and I found your father, who showed me what real love looks like. Papa would never hurt anyone, Jamie said with absolute certainty. No, he would not. Your father is a good man, Jamie, the best man I have ever known, and you have his kindness in you. I see it every day. I want to be just like Papa when I grow up, Jamie said. Then you will be a very fine man indeed, Beatrice said, pulling him close for a hug. The years continued their steady march forward. The children grew taller. Harrison's hair began to show threads of silver, and Beatrice found lines forming around her eyes and mouth, marks of laughter rather than sorrow. The ranch prospered, their family remained healthy, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm of work and play, challenges and triumphs. In 1893, a decade after their wedding, Harrison suggested they take a trip to California. I want to show you the ocean, he said. You told me once that you wanted to see it but were too afraid to go alone. Well, you are not alone anymore. Let's go together. They left the children with Mrs. Chen, who had become like a grandmother to them, and took the train west. When they finally reached the coast, and Beatrice stood on the beach, feeling the salt spray on her face and hearing the roar of the waves, she felt something profound settle in her chest. She had made it. She had survived Thomas, had survived her fear, had built a life so full and rich that she could stand here, safe and loved, experiencing something she had once thought impossible. Harrison wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on the top of her head. What do you think? It is beautiful, Beatrice said. Everything is beautiful. This moment, this life, this love. Harrison, I need you to know something. When I met you, I was just surviving, just existing from one day to the next. But you taught me how to live, really live. You showed me that my scars did not define me, that I could be more than just damaged. You loved me until I could see them fade, until I could look at myself and see something other than Thomas's victim. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could give me. You gave me myself back. You did the hard work, Harrison said. I just held your hand while you did it, but I am honored that I got to be part of your journey, Beatrice. Loving you has been the easiest and the best thing I have ever done. They stood there together as the sun set over the Pacific, two people who had found each other in the harsh landscape of the Arizona Territory and had built something beautiful together. Behind them lay years of healing and growth, of learning to trust and love again. Ahead of them lay more years, more adventures, more challenges and joys. But in that moment, they were simply present, simply grateful, simply in love. When they returned to the ranch, the children rushed to greet them, full of stories about their week with Mrs. Chen. Jamie had learned to bake bread. Grace had successfully trained a stray dog she had adopted. And Samuel had negotiated a truce with the neighbor boy he had been feuding with. The house was warm with lamplight and laughter, and Beatrice stood in the doorway, taking it all in, this life she had built from the ashes of her old one. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Beatrice and Harrison sat together on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead in the clear Arizona sky. She thought about the woman she had been when she first arrived in Yuma, scared and alone, carrying scars that felt like they would never heal. She thought about the first time Harrison had walked into Mrs. Chen's parlor, patient and kind, willing to wait for her to be ready. She thought about the journey they had taken together, the slow, steady work of healing and learning to love. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not met me?" Beatrice asked. "Sometimes," Harrison admitted. "I suppose I would have eventually married someone, run the ranch, had a decent life, but it would not have been this life, and I cannot imagine anything better than what we have built together. I think I would have survived," Beatrice said slowly. "I would have kept sewing, kept living in that small room, kept existing. but I would not have really lived. I would have let Thomas win, let him take not just my past but my future too. You gave me that future back, Harrison. You showed me that surviving was not enough, that I deserved to thrive. We gave that to each other, Harrison said, pulling her close. I am a better man because of you, Beatrice. You taught me that love is not just about grand gestures or passionate declarations. It is about showing up every day, being present, being patient, being kind. You taught me that real strength is gentle, that healing takes time, that some victories are measured in small steps rather than giant leaps. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Beatrice said, I want to tell you something I have never said before. I forgive him. Harrison looked at her in surprise. Thomas? Yes. Not for his sake, but for mine. I forgive him for what he did to me, not because he deserves forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. Carrying that anger, that hatred, it was like drinking poison and expecting him to die. He is already dead. He cannot hurt me anymore, but I was still letting him control me by hating him, so I forgive him and I let him go, completely, finally. Harrison's eyes were suspiciously bright in the starlight. That is incredibly brave, Beatrice. I learned it from you. You taught me that I could choose who I wanted to be, that my past did not have to determine my future, so I choose this. I choose peace. I choose love. I choose us. Harrison kissed her then, slow and sweet, a kiss that tasted of promises kept and futures bright with possibility. When they finally parted, both were smiling. I love you, Beatrice Wells, Harrison said. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond if there is anything beyond. I love you too, Beatrice said. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for loving me until I could see my own worth. Thank you for giving me a family, a home, a life. Thank you for everything. The years continued to pass as years do. The children grew into adults, each finding their own paths. Jamie became a teacher, using his gentle nature and love of books to educate the next generation. Grace married a veterinarian and opened an animal hospital in Tucson. Her fearlessness translated into a passion for helping creatures that could not help themselves. Samuel took over the ranch, combining Harrison's practical wisdom with his own innovative ideas to expand the operation. Harrison and Beatrice grew old together, their hair silver, their faces lined with age but still alight with love when they looked at each other. They became grandparents, and then great-grandparents, their family tree spreading out in branches that they could never have imagined when they first met in that small parlor in Yuma. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a party at the ranch. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, stories shared about the legacy Harrison and Beatrice had built. As Beatrice looked around at all the faces, all the lives that existed because she had found the courage to let Harrison love her, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Harrison asked, coming up beside her with 2 glasses of lemonade. "I am thinking about scars," Beatrice said. "About how they fade but never completely disappear. I can still feel mine if I look for them, but I have to look. They do not define me anymore. They are just part of my story, and my story is so much bigger than them." "You are remarkable," Harrison said. "Do you know that? After everything you endured, you built all of this. A family that loves each other, children who are making the world better, a legacy of kindness and strength. You should be proud, Beatrice." "We built it together," Beatrice corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you. You were my anchor when I was lost, my strength when I was weak, my hope when I could not see a future. Everything good in my life came from the moment I took your hand and decided to trust again." Harrison set down the glasses and took her hands in his, just as he had on that river bank so many years ago. "Dance with me," he said. They moved onto the makeshift dance floor, and Harrison pulled Beatrice into his arms as the musicians struck up a waltz. They moved together with the ease of long practice, their steps perfectly synchronized, their bodies knowing each other as well as their minds and hearts did. "I would do it all again," Beatrice said as they swayed to the music. "Every hard moment, every tear, every struggle, it brought me to you and you were worth it all." "I am the lucky one," Harrison said. "You let me love you, Beatrice. You trusted me with your wounded heart, and you let me help you heal. That is the greatest gift I have ever received." As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, painting the Arizona sky in those familiar shades of orange and purple, Beatrice looked at Harrison and saw not just her husband but her savior, her partner, her best friend, her love. The scars from her first husband had faded so much that she had to actively search for them, and when she did find them, they no longer had any power over her. They were just memories now, echoes of pain long since transformed into wisdom and strength. Harrison had loved her until she could see them fade, but more than that, he had loved her until she no longer needed to see them at all, until they were simply part of the tapestry of her life rather than the defining feature. He had shown her that love could heal, that patience could work miracles, that kindness was the most powerful force in the world. As they stood together, surrounded by their family, Beatrice thought about the woman she had been and the woman she had become. The journey from one to the other had been long and difficult, marked by fear and doubt and painful growth. But it had also been marked by love, by Harrison's steady presence, by his refusal to let her believe she was broken beyond repair. Years later, when Beatrice was in her late 70s, and Harrison was suffering from the aches and pains of a life spent working hard, they still sat together on the porch every evening, watching the sun set and talking about their day. Their bodies had slowed, but their love had only deepened, aged like fine wine into something rich and complex and infinitely precious. One evening, as they sat in their usual spot, Beatrice said, "I want you to know that if I had to choose a life out of all the possible lives I could have lived, I would choose this one. Every single time. Despite everything, because of everything, I would choose you and this life we built together." Harrison took her hand, his fingers intertwined with hers, and smiled. "That may be the most romantic thing you have ever said to me. I am serious, Harrison. You saved me. Not in some dramatic fairy tale way, but in the real, important way. You showed me that I deserved to be loved, that I was worth the effort, that my past did not have to determine my future. You loved me when I could not love myself, and you waited patiently while I learned how. That is real heroism." "I just loved you," Harrison said simply. "That is all I ever did. I just loved you exactly as you were and waited for you to believe that you deserved it." "And I do believe it now," Beatrice said. "Finally, completely, I believe it. The scars are gone, Harrison. Not physically, not entirely, but they have faded so much that I cannot even find them anymore. You loved me until I saw them fade, and now all I can see is the life we built together, the love we shared, the family we created. That is your legacy, Harrison Wells. You turned a broken woman into a whole one, not by fixing her but by loving her until she could fix herself." Harrison's eyes were wet with tears. "And you turned a lonely cowboy into a husband and father. You gave my life meaning, Beatrice. You are my greatest adventure, my most precious treasure, my home." They sat together as the stars came out. Two old people who had loved each other through decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and struggle. Their bodies were failing, their time growing short, but their love remained as strong as it had been on their wedding day, strengthened by years of choosing each other every single day. When Harrison passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Beatrice grieved deeply, but without despair. She had loved him and been loved by him, and that love had transformed her life from a tragedy into a triumph. She lived for another 3 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about the man who had saved her, who had shown her what real love looked like. On her final day, lying in the bed she had shared with Harrison for so many years, Beatrice closed her eyes and thought about scars. She thought about how they had once defined her entire existence, how she had believed they would never fade, how she had been so certain that she was broken beyond repair. And then she thought about Harrison, about his patience and kindness, about the way he had loved her steadily and gently, until those scars had faded into nothing more than faint memories. Her last thought, before she slipped peacefully away to whatever came next, was that love had indeed healed her. Not quickly, not easily, but completely. Harrison had loved her until she saw her scars fade, and in doing so he had given her the greatest gift imaginable. A life worth living, a love worth having, a future worth believing in. The story of Beatrice and Harrison became legend in Yuma, passed down through generations as an example of what real love could accomplish. Their descendants grew and spread, carrying with them the lessons their great-grandparents had taught. That healing takes time, that patience is a virtue, that kindness can work miracles, and that love, real love, can transform even the deepest wounds into distant memories. The ranch remained in the family, generation after generation working the land that Harrison had built and Beatrice had made into a home. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set in shades of orange and purple, and the stars began to emerge in the clear Arizona sky, those who sat on the porch and watched the beauty unfold remembered the couple who had proved that scars could fade, that love could heal, and that even the most broken heart could learn to beat whole again.